So Unit 7 was all about multiplying polynomials, adding polynomials, dividing polynomials, but in order to do that, we first had to learn about the laws of exponents. So here's a quick little summary of the laws of exponents. If you want to pause the video and review these, you can. But just to hit some highlights, remember that a negative exponent, you flip it down to the bottom, right? So you can see in this example with the 2 over here. A 0 exponent just equals 1. When you're multiplying two terms with the same base, you actually add the exponents. When you're dividing, you subtract the exponents, okay? And then when you have a power to a power, you multiply them together. I thought this was better explained, though, just through doing a couple problems. So I'm going to work through a few star questions. So the first one is 144k squared r to the 14th raised to the 1/2 power. So remember that when you have an exponent outside of the parentheses, you need to distribute it to everything inside the parentheses as long as there is no plus or minus sign inside. So that means I've got 144 to the 1/2 power. K squared to the 1/2, I need to multiply 2 and 1/2, so that's 1. R to the 14th, again, I need to multiply the 1/2, so that's 7. Well, k to the 1 is just k, so that means I can really narrow this down to f or j, because they both have the k r to the 7th. Now, 144 to the 1/2 power, that does not mean 144 times a half, right? In the same way that 3 squared is not 3 times 2, 144 to the half is not 144 times a half. What it actually means is square root. Now, we did not talk about that in class, but your calculator would tell you that. If you typed in your calculator 144 to the 1/2 power and pressed enter, it would tell you that it is 12. So the answer here is F. But what I really wanted you to gain from this problem more is the reminders about how to work with the exponent. Remembering that you distribute it and remembering that you multiply it. Not by the base, but by the exponent. Okay, here's another star question. Again, this top part right here, we want to multiply that -3. So q to the -12 is going to be what we have left over there. Then remember that these negative exponents have to be flipped. The -15 is going to have to go up, -12 is going to have to go down. So that is rewritten to look like this, except we can't have q on top and q on bottom, so we need to subtract, and we're going to end up with just q to the 3rd. So the answer here is H. This one is probably the hardest looking problem, but it's not so bad. We're just going to take it one fraction at a time. So looking at the left-hand side, 10 and 2, you just treat like numbers that you've always had. 10 over 2. 10 divided by 2 is just 5. No big deal. Q to the 5th, well, q to the 5th is the only q on that left-hand side, so I'm going to leave it alone. But the w, I've got w's on top and w's on bottom. I've got 7 w's on top and 3 on the bottom, which means really I only have 4 left over on the top. I don't even really have a bottom anymore because there is nothing on the bottom. There could be a 1 if we wanted to, but I don't think I need it. So now let's move to the second fraction. I'm multiplying these. The 4, I don't have another whole number that I'm dealing with, so I'm just going to leave the 4 alone. The q, we've got q to the 6th squared. Well, that needs to be multiplied, so really I've got q to the 12th. Then this w to the -5 needs to go on top because it has a negative exponent. So now I'm just multiplying all of this together. I'm going to start by looking at my whole numbers, 5 and 4. 5 times 4 is just 20. Then I'm going to go piece by piece. So w to the 4th times w to the 5th. You just add those exponents together, so w to the 9th. Q to the 12th is the only q out there, so he's just going to be q to the 12th. Did I do something wrong? Oh, I forgot my q to the 5th. I'm going to leave this in the video just to prove to you that sometimes we make mistakes. So q to the 5th needs to be combined with that q to the 12th, now we're on track, to give you q to the 17th. So that would be B. But notice, I was able to see that I made a mistake real fast because I knew I had to have the 20, and I knew I needed w to the 9th. So B was really the only option out there, but that did prove to me that I needed to go check the q's. Okay, another thing in Unit 7 was simplifying radicals. You have learned at this point that the calculator will do this for you. You literally don't have to know anything about it. Just type that in and it will tell you the answer is D. But just in case you want a reminder of how you do this by hand, you split the numbers inside into perfect squares. So this is 16 times 6, is that right? So yeah, 16 times 6. So then we realize we can take the square root of 16, pull that out, which is 4, and then I'm just left with square root of 6 on the inside. And that's how I get that answer. Okay? But again, calculator will do that for you. if you're doing the STAR test, I would just let the calculator do it for you. Save your brain power for something else. Okay, the other thing that we talked about in Unit 7 was all the operations with these polynomials. So here's a STAR question. It's a perfect example. I'm wanting to multiply this trinomial times this binomial. So what I need to make sure I do is that I carefully distribute everything from the left-hand expression to the right-hand expression. So I'm going to start with h squared, multiply it by negative 4h. So that's going to give me negative 4h cubed. Then I'm going to do h squared times 3. So plus 3h squared. Then I move on to the next piece of the puzzle. So 9h, I'm going to multiply him by negative 4h. That's going to give me negative 36h squared. Then 9h times 3, so plus 27h. Next one, negative 1 times negative 4h would be positive 4h. And then negative 1 times 3 would be negative 3. Okay? Now, you can kind of figure some things out just by doing this alone. We know that we want to start with negative 4h squared. So g is out, j is out. Right? Then we also know that we're going to end with negative 3. So really the answer here has to be f, but let's go ahead and combine like terms just to make sure we did this correctly. So 3h squared negative 36h squared is going to be negative 33, which is good. And then 27h and 4h is going to be 31h, which is also good. So the answer there has to be f. The only other thing I want to talk to you about regarding multiplying polynomials is perfect square trinomials. When you have a problem presented to you like you see here, you do not want to distribute this exponent. That is bad. We do not distribute the exponent when there is a plus sign inside. This plus sign prevents you from doing that. You have to either do this the long way, like this, or remember the trick. And if you're not so good at remembering tricks, I would just do it the long way, like I just did the problem before. So you would multiply this out, 9x squared plus 21x plus 21x plus 49. So you get when you multiply this one. Then combine like terms, and you get 9x squared plus 42x plus 49. And that would be your answer. If you want to be reminded what the trick is, I'll show you here in a second. But again, if you want us to just stop this video here and just be reminded that you can't distribute the square, then you're good. Okay? The trick is to square the first term, square the last term, and always have a plus sign. And then the middle term is the result of multiplying these together and doubling it. So we'd have minus, 40x, because 5 times 4 is 20, 20 doubled is 40x. Okay, but again, if the trick is not something you feel like you can remember, then just do it the long way.